It's an exciting time to see that there is a new Superman movie coming out. Director James Gunn has taken the helm to create a brand new interpretation of the OG legendary superhero. So I've been keeping an eye on all the Superman news lately, from topics like the sneak peek trailer, the full official trailer, and even the absolutely bonkers Mutant Monkeys leak rumor. And honestly, the trailers and the clips look solid, but the internet, like usual, has a lot to say on the subject. Never have I seen grown adults get so worked up over a movie. Well, at least more worked up than usual. So that's the topic of this video. I just wanted to offer my opinion about the whole situation. Superman is one of the most recognizable and enduring superheroes of all time. He is also a cultural icon with fans all over the world. Yet somehow, there are some people who seem to misunderstand him. With Superman 2025 on the way, the internet is once again flooded with hot takes about the movie and about James Gunn versus Zack Snyder. In this video, I want to break down what people get wrong about Superman. So first things first, let me offer a disclaimer. I am not a James Gunn fan, nor am I a Zack Snyder fan. I have no horse in this race, which means I can look at things objectively from an outside perspective. Shocking. A person without a bias, right? So I'll go over the sneak peek, the Mutant Monkeys leak, the official trailer, and then my thoughts about Superman's overall character. But before we go over to the video proper, let's give a quick refresher to the people who don't know who exactly Superman is. Superman was created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster, who first wrote Superman as a villain in the 1933 The Reign of the Superman. It wasn't until 1938 that Superman was formally introduced in Action Comics #1 as the superhero we know him as today. The conception of the idea of Superman comes from different sources, such as science fiction, mythologies, and allegedly the tragic death of Siegel's father inspired him to create a heroic protector. Because the video started as a video for the sneak peek, but since time has passed and a lot of news happened, I had to change the script, and this is the video we see now. Before we get into all that, let's start with the sneak peek trailer, where I think a lot of the bad takes started. And I think that's what the people who are criticizing James Gunn's movie trailer is missing. They don't understand that Superman is not strong because he can't be hurt or nothing bad ever happens to him, but Superman is strong because he gets back up after being hurt and keeps going. With that said, Superman's strength isn't about physical power, but it's about resilience. I will talk more about this at a later point in the video, but for right now I want to keep it on topic because I have a lot to say on the matter. So let's talk about Krypto the Superdog for a minute. Some people are completely misunderstanding the scene with Krypto in the trailer. They are thinking that Krypto the Superdog was beating up Superman. But let's be real here. That's not what happened. If we actually took a few seconds to think about it, Superman was already beaten up by some unknown foe earlier that happened right before the sneak peek trailer. It could have been either a kaiju, Ultraman, or Lex Luthor in a suit. We won't know until the movie releases. Krypto was just jumping on him playfully and absent-mindedly. Some people are overanalyzing this moment instead of recognizing it for what it is. Krypto is a dog with Superman's strength and powers, meaning that he doesn't think like a human being. He just acts instinctively just like a dog would. Some dogs know when their owners are hurt and others don't, but that's the thing. They are dogs. For example, imagine a normal dog sitter walking Krypto and Krypto sees a squirrel. All right? Yes, you will believe a dog can fly. Instead of going on a walk, he's going to take you for a hypersonic run. The trailer also revealed that Superman suffered broken bones and internal injuries after a battle, proving the fact that yes, he can be hurt. But the point is, Superman has always expressed pain in various media, whether emotional pain, like Lois Lane's death, or physical ones, with fights with Doomsday, Kryptonite, Magic, and let's not forget Batman here. The real strength of Superman is that he is resilient. Not that he's untouchable. And Superman whelping during the fight scenes in Superman 4 Quest for Peace implies that he is facing a formidable foe that can hurt him, and not just because he's a weakling that just screams apropos of nothing. But regardless if that makes sense or not, alright, that's just what it is. People feel pain. And then there's Ben Shapiro's strange and baffling complaint about Superman being hurt by sunlight through a magnifying glass. He acts as if he's never seen a movie or a TV show with a kid burning ants with a magnifying glass. I mean, come on, it's basic physics. And I could even spell it out for you. Watch this. The sun plus a magnifying glass equals ouch, alright? So imagine a large magnifying glass pointing straight at Superman. More importantly, the trailer explicitly stated that Superman has already suffered injuries and he is being healed by the sun, especially his bones being forcibly resetted, meaning that any external pressure could cause additional pain. The lack of empathy in this argument is stunning, but unfortunately, it's not surprising from him and the people who voluntarily listen to him. So let's talk about the strangest rumor I've ever heard, the Mutant Monkeys leak. To recap for the people who don't know, the alleged leak says that Lex Luthor weaponizes social media against Superman by using an army of mutant monkeys to flood the internet with anti-Superman propaganda and spamming the hashtag #supershit. The negative comments affect Superman and makes him feel upset. The idea of this leak is that Superman isn't fighting just any old villain in the movie, but he's also fighting against public perception. I don't know if this leak is true or not, but it sounds weird nonetheless. My theory is that this is James Gunn's jab at the haters, but this is not the first time he stirred up some trouble. He has a history of incorporating subcultures, even questionable ones, into his projects. Whether it's the racist militia in Peacemaker, or the incel army in Creature Commandos. Given that Snyder's fans are blaming Gunn personally for ending the DC Snyderverse films, some speculate that this subplot is his way of lashing out at toxic fandoms by turning them into literal villains in his films. And apparently, this Mutant Monkey leak is no different because he's turning the haters into monkeys. But based on the reactions to this leak, it seems like the point went completely over their heads and they only fixated on the surface level absurdity of the leak. They don't realize that continuously trashing the Superman movie, and by extension trashing James Gunn, you're only going to be fueling his persecution complex. So naturally, the more hate he receives, the more he's going to lash out in a similar manner. So if the haters really want to stop James Gunn from doing weird stuff in his movies and his shows, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but my suggestion to the haters and to the complainers is to not let James Gunn make a monkey out of you and learn to control your rage. Clearly, the more you talk about James Gunn, the more you're going to enable him to keep going. Even though I don't agree with this behavior, and I think he should also learn to control his feelings too. But that's still a factor that people should take into consideration and learn how to control themselves and act professional when interacting with people that are doing their jobs. Recently, I saw the official trailer, and so far I liked what I saw. I've seen a couple of issues here and there, but honestly, it's not gonna retract from my overall opinion of the movie. Speaking of, when I first saw the sneak peek trailer, I actually made a little prediction, because this script was originally just about the sneak peek trailer, but obviously I had to rework it. But now that I've seen this trailer, I feel like I've actually made a solid prediction of what's going to happen in the movie. You see, I predicted that the story is going to follow the standard 3-act structure. In case you don't know, the 3-act structure consists of a first part with an introduction and rising action. The second part is the climax of the story, and the third part is the resolution and the ending. So with that said, here is what I predicted. In the first half of the movie, it's going to focus on Superman fighting some adversary. Again, we don't know who that is yet because the movie hasn't released yet. However, he is going to also have interactions with heroes like Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific. Even though these other heroes are in their own super team, Superman's going to go off to do his own thing. And of course, Lex Luthor is not going to be happy with the fact that Superman exists, so Superman will most likely face pushback as well. In the second act, Superman is going to be beat up a lot, and that's where we get into the sneak peek trailer with him and Krypto in the Fortress of Solitude. He's going to heal up and he's still going to feel unsure of himself. But based on the official trailer, we see a fight between him and Lex Luthor, so that's most likely still part of the second act. And in the third act, he's going to receive a pep talk from a loved one, and he's going to realize that he has a place in the world. Then he goes off to fight the bad guy of the movie, happily ever after. Now, that was my initial prediction as of the sneak peek trailer. Of course, I seen the official trailer, so Lex Luthor being in the Fortress of Solitude still solidifies my prediction and doesn't change it that much, if any. Gunn is clearly emphasizing Superman's humanity over the godlike image that Snyder was leaning onto his films, which I will talk about in a minute. That's going to be saved for later. The trailer was solid, and honestly, I'm excited about it. If I were to give it a preliminary rating, I would say that it's a solid 7 out of 10. Of course, I can already anticipate some inevitable comments, inevitable complaints, especially takes like Superman's voice in the beginning and how it was high-pitched. But here's the thing. It's probably because he's being friendly with Lois Lane. All right, I don't think he's going to talk like super macho man all the time, especially if he's using his Clark Kent disguise. But you know, and I know, that certain people online are just going to complain about it regardless, saying something along the lines of Superman should always sound serious and commanding instead of having joy or humor. God forbid a human being is a human being, am I right? Sarcasm, of course. Before I get to the point in the actual video, I'm going to go ahead and give you my opinions about James Gunn and Zack Snyder, as controversial as that might sound. But I also want to start by iterating how I believe each movie director work. You see, every filmmaker has a unique approach to storytelling, and understanding their strengths is the key to matching them with the right projects, because some directors thrive in certain genres while others struggle when they're taken out of their comfort zone. For example, Martin Scorsese is a master of unfaltering crime dramas, making him the go-to director for mafia films. Even though he directed the movie Hugo, mafia movies are Scorsese's bread and butter. Steven Spielberg is the best at emotionally compelling narratives that balance spectacle and sentiment, which is why his films like E.T. and Schindler's List resonate so deeply. Christopher Nolan is known for his complex, introspective storytelling in practical effects-heavy films, making him an ideal director for cerebral blockbusters like Inception and Interstellar. You see, the same logic applies to superhero films. Zack Snyder's signature style leans heavily into dark, atmospheric visuals and operatic storytelling, making him a natural fit for brooding, high-stakes narrative like 300 and Watchmen. Meanwhile, James Gunn has built his reputation on humorous films about teamwork and heartfelt character moments, which is why his Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, The Squad, and Peacemaker illustrate his strengths. While Snyder approaches superheroes through a mythological lens, Gunn focuses on humanizing them, emphasizing their vulnerabilities and personal connection. This contrasts and highlights why some directors thrive in certain genres and franchises, while others feel out of place. That's why choosing the right filmmaker can make or break a project. Before I forget to mention it, I've been hearing complaints from the Snyder fans that James Gunn is copying Zack Snyder's cinematography. First things first, no one owns a copyright on cinematography styles. It's impossible to enforce, and filmmaking has always been about building upon past influences. Every director borrows techniques from others. That's how art and cinema evolve. For example, Michael Bay took inspiration from Tony Scott and Steven Spielberg for his patented style of Bayhem. Christopher Nolan has cited the great Stanley Kubrick as an inspiration for his films. And even Zack Snyder himself has drawn influence from Frank Miller's visual storytelling for his films. And like I said, filmmaking is an evolving art form, and directors constantly refine and reinterpret styles to fit their own vision. And second, Gunn himself has acknowledged the fact that he incorporated some elements of Snyder's style into his films, which isn't surprising given that both directors have worked within the DC universe. More importantly, Gunn and Snyder have a good working relationship, so there's no indication of any bad blood between the both of them. Copying from someone isn't implying incompetency, it just means evolving. At the end of the day, this argument feels very forced, or as the saying goes, grasping at straws. This is just another case of haters looking for anything to complain about. Gunn's film will have its own distinct identity whether or not it shares any similarities with Snyder's style or any other director's style. The most important thing that truly matters in any film is the story and execution. That should be the bare minimum from any film. Before I talk about James Gunn and Zack Snyder again, I want to remind everyone that I do not have a personal stake with defending or criticizing either director. This video is about Superman, not them. Which means I can look at these directors objectively from an outsider point of view, like I mentioned. Some people might accuse me of defending James Gunn, but the only thing that I'm defending is a good faith interpretation and discourse, meaning that if I hear a bad take from any side, I will try to debunk it. So both sides have to agree to play nice, because this does not benefit anybody to keep throwing baseless accusations against each other. Now, I'm going to talk about James Gunn, about what I like and what I don't like about his style, and then I'll do the same thing by addressing things that I do and do not like about Zack Snyder's directing style. I'm going to use Man of Steel as an example, and it serves as a very good twofer for better purposes of illustration. What I like about James Gunn's work is that he gives an emotional depth to every character on screen, regardless if it's a popular character or obscure ones. You can easily understand their motivations and their goals, and I think that is a very important task, especially in ensemble films, where you have a lot of characters and you need to understand who each one of them are. His work with Marvel, and especially on the Guardians of the Galaxy films, give new life to characters that no one has ever heard of, like Rocket Raccoon, Groot, or Drax, and turning them into household names. And let's not forget about the emotional gut punch that was the third Guardians film. He has continued his pattern of character-driven storytelling and humor with the DC film The Squad, and especially his show Peacemaker and Creature Commandos, by giving every character a clear personality, unique traits, and backstory. However, what I don't like about James Gunn's superhero films is their tonal inconsistency, which can throw people off or even annoy a lot of people. And I think his reliance on quirky dialogue and random humor might be too much. For example, he sometimes uses heavy-handed comedic beats, which leads to undercutting serious moments, but I do agree that not every scene needs a joke. The tone and the mood have to be respected. That's why it's important to let an emotional scene play out before attempting comic relief. His approach to superhero films often involves misfit characters overcoming adversity, which I feel at this point might be too repetitive, which works well for ensemble films, but might not translate too well in a solo movie. And I completely understand the complaints that Gunn's Superman film might lack the gravitas traditionally associated with characters that we have seen in the past, especially with portrayals by Henry Cavill and Christopher Reeve, which I think did terrific job playing these parts in the films. Judging by the reactions to the earlier trailer, where Superman appears a little too vulnerable than fans might have expected, especially the sneak peek trailer, we can understand that James Gunn is not a bad filmmaker. He just has flaws, but that's okay. He has things that he needs to work on if he wants to strengthen his skill set, just like any other director. And even Zack Snyder, he has things he can work on. Speaking of, now, before I offer my criticism of Zack Snyder through his film Man of Steel, I'm going to tell you what I liked about this movie, and typically what I like about Zack Snyder's movie style. I think overall, Henry Cavill did a great job at portraying Superman. That kind of reminds me of the animated series and a little bit of how Christopher Reeve portrayed Superman. Zack Snyder's casting choices are good, and he actually does have a good eye for detail. I also thought that the special effects were pretty cool. The way that Superman was flying around and how cool his fortress looked with the suit reveal, I legit thought it was nice. But with that being said, here's what I didn't like about the movie. I feel it was a complete tonal shift away from the traditional Superman brand of optimism that we have seen from the animated shows and even from the Christopher Reeve films. This film felt very dark and gloomy, which clashes with Superman's hopeful nature. I thought Lois Lane's connection with Superman felt a little too forced. They should have let them have more time to develop a relationship. I didn't like Jonathan Kett's advice about Clark hiding his powers at the expense of letting people die. Ironically, his advice led him to die in a tornado for literally no reason, and he easily could have been saved. Martha Kent's advice for Clark telling him you don't owe these people anything felt cold and dismissive of humanity despite its intentions. The destruction of Metropolis was excessive, and Superman should have prioritized saving civilians rather than engaging in an all-out brawl. Some people would hear that and argue that the massive city destruction cliche isn't unique to Man of Steel. They would point out that the Avengers had a similar large-scale battle. However, the key difference is that the Avengers actively tried to save people, and the focus of the scene was repelling the alien invaders and not treating the destruction as shock value. Meanwhile, Man of Steel makes the devastation feel shockingly real, to the point where it felt like thousands of people actually died on screen. Whether or not we've seen it, it felt like it. The same goes with Avengers Age of Ultron. When a sentient robot and his robot army lift the city off the ground with the plans of using it as an asteroid to wipe out human life, it is up to the superheroes to not just stop the robots, but also make a god-honest attempt to minimize human casualties. We see the heroes saving civilians, and even Quicksilver dies trying to save another superhero by the name of Hawkeye. The heroes were saving heroes too, along with the civilians. To put this in perspective, the movie 2012, which is about a global catastrophe with earthquakes, tsunamis, and supervolcanoes, felt like it had fewer on-screen deaths than in Man of Steel. The issue isn't just the sheer scale of the destruction on the screen, but how the destruction was framed. The same goes with the film Independence Day starring Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. There is an alien invasion and cities around the world get blown up, so the human characters, with no superpowers, try to put a stop to it. Sure, the cities get destroyed, but the focus isn't on the gratuitous display of damages, but showing how much of a threat the aliens are. You see, both 2012 and Independence Day treat disaster as a spectacle and central to the plot of the film, where the normal human characters have to try to survive the cataclysms. And the first two Avengers films have city destructions as an obstacle to overcome and try to save as many people as they can, regardless if it's an alien invasion or an army of robots. Meanwhile, Man of Steel, a superhero film, puts Superman in the middle of the destruction without him trying to prevent casualties. That disconnect is what makes the destruction feel unsettling rather than heroic. Personal opinions aside, that remains the fundamental difference and the objective fact. The biggest issue for me was Superman killing Zod, which directly contradicted Superman's moral code. I understand that Snyder defended his decision by saying that Superman was placed in a no-win scenario. However, it felt like he could have done more. Instead of snapping Zod's neck, he could have flown away while holding Zod, or used his super speed to move the innocent family to safety. The way the scene lingered on Superman agonizing over his choice made it feel unbearably grim, as if the film was reveling in the tragedy and desperately eliciting emotion out of the viewer, rather than portraying it as an unfortunate and unavoidable necessity. Yes, Superman has struggled with moral dilemmas before in films, shows, and comics, but typically he finds an option that doesn't involve taking a life. That's what makes him Superman, having the ability to find solution beyond violence, even if it seems impossible. Watching this in theaters, I felt deeply disturbed, not just by the act itself, but how it fundamentally changed the essence of Superman. He's supposed to be the ultimate beacon of hope, someone who proves that power doesn't have to require brutality. Now, while both directors bring their unique perspective to the superhero genre, their distinct styles have often sparked debate about what truly defines Superman on the big screen. That is why I think having an appropriate director associated with a Superman movie is important. Now, if I were tasked with making a Superman movie, I myself wouldn't be too sure who to pick. Possibly Spielberg? I mean, he's very good at emotional films, so with a good writer, he could probably do a good job. Or maybe I could find a director who wants to dip their toes in a different genre, just like how Martin Scorsese did with Hugo. I'm about to go into the title of this video. I'm going to reiterate a few points, but I think these points are very important to understand what Superman means to not just the comic book world, but also the popular culture as well. As I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the sneak peek trailer, Superman's strength isn't about physical power, but it's about resilience. To illustrate this, let's think of the hero Green Lantern. His power comes from his ring, but more importantly, willpower. Even though his weakness is fear, he is able to overcome fear to unlock his true potential. Superman works in a very similar manner. He is not strong because nothing hurts him, but he is strong because he keeps going no matter what. His moniker, the Man of Steel, represents his perseverance and not literal invulnerability. But if we are going to be literal for a moment here, even steel has a melting point of over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I think James Gunn knows this more than he's letting on, because Gunn seems to be drawing inspiration from different comic book stories. For example, All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison, presents Superman as an optimistic, compassionate figure who embraces his humanity despite his godlike powers. Even though Superman is fatally poisoned by radiation, he spends his final days making sure that the world is safe without his presence. James Gunn stated that his Superman will embody kindness and hope, which aligns with Morrison's vision. Another story that he is allegedly drawing inspiration from is Kingdom Come. He does this by flipping the themes of Kingdom Come and playing it in reverse. Because you see, Kingdom Come depicts an older, disillusioned Superman who returns from retirement to restore order in a chaotic world. James Gunn seems to be doing the opposite of Kingdom Come. His Superman is young and still finding his place. He proves that heroism isn't about dominance or a pseudo-realistic bureaucracy of a super team, but about inspiring others to do good because it's the right thing to do. This shift in perspective is crucial because it moves away from the darker, brooding Superman that we have seen in Snyder's film and instead focusing on a version of the character who is flawed but hopeful. Gunn also draws influence from Superman for All Seasons. For All Seasons tells us the story of Superman from the perspective of 4 different people, while Superman is discovering who he is and grows as a person. And lastly, Gunn draws influence from Brian Azzarello's Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. To quickly summarize the story, Lex Luthor challenges Superman by creating his own hero for Metropolis due to Lex Luthor ego tripping again. This would explain why Ultraman is in the movie, because he serves as Lex Luthor's creation to fight Superman. There's even references to James Gunn's life that has been put into this film. For example, Krytpo, the super dog, is inspired by James Gunn's real dog, Uzo. The home that the Kents live in is a reference to the neighborhood childhood in which James Gunn saw as a kid in Missouri. And even the release date of the movie itself is a reference to James Gunn's late father's birthday. I find it very hard to believe that James Gunn would purposely treat Superman like trash as a joke, especially as the complainers on the internet would believe. A lot of the criticism surrounding James Gunn's Superman sneak peek trailer comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of the character. People assume Superman is strong because he is invincible, but that's not the case. He is strong because he gets back up after being hurt and fights another day. In the comic, Superman has been beaten up, broken, and even killed, yet he always finds the strength to keep going. He has been physically overpowered by villains like Doomsday, as I mentioned before, but also Darkseid and Mongol, and even normal people like Batman had his turn kicking Superman's ass. He's also vulnerable to kryptonite, magic, and red sun radiation. Superman has always had weaknesses, but these weaknesses doesn't diminish him as a hero. Superman's resilience isn't just physical, but it's moral and emotional. He has faced distrust, government interference, and even self-doubt. Yet he's never let cynicism change him. In Superman for All Season, he struggles with whether he's truly making a difference or not. In Kingdom Come, he isolates himself after humanity rejects his ideals. And in All-Star Superman, despite knowing he's dying of radiation, he spends his final days ensuring that the world will be safe without him. This is why the idea of Superman being too perfect or boring is misguided and even malicious at times. He's not compelling because he is unbeatable or smugly shrugs off every attack and wins every time, like a poorly written Mary Sue character. He's compelling because he chooses to do right when it's hard or dangerous to. He is thoughtful and caring and not some brutish barbarian. To quickly jump back to the topic of Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, Superman killing Zod wasn't just some edgy filmmaking choice, but a betrayal to the Superman brand. Seeing him take a life made him feel less like the optimistic Superman we know and love, and more like another generic, tragic anti-hero trademark. That decision fundamentally changed his character, reinforcing a darker interpretation that carried through the Snyderverse. This decision implies that Zack didn't care about Superman's character or didn't know anything about him. That's what separates him from all the knockoff Superman characters that we have seen in the comics and in other forms of media. In recent years, we've seen a rise in evil Superman characters like Homelander from The Boys and Omni-Man from Invincible, who take Superman's powers but strip away his morality and even his humanity. These characters are terrifying because they embody the worst case scenario of what happens when a godlike being lacks empathy. Homelander is a narcissistic tyrant who craves adoration but has no real compassion, while Omni-Man is a brutal conqueror who sees humanity as weak. And honestly, I don't like the evil Superman characters because it's basically all the same. It's all played out and a boring cliche at this point. And that's why the movie Brightburn didn't work. It was just too much of the same thing. The reason why Superman stands apart is because he chooses to be good despite his overwhelming power. He doesn't rule over people, he protects them. His strength isn't just physical, it's his moral integrity, his ability to inspire hope, and his unwavering commitment to do the right thing. That's what people often misunderstand about Superman. He isn't compelling because he's invincible, but because he has the power to dominate, yet chooses humility and kindness instead. To further elaborate on this, let's talk about how Superman operates as a hero and also how Batman operates as a hero. You see, Batman and Superman are often framed as opposites. However, their contrast goes deeper than just their powers and personality. It's rooted in narrative themes. Batman is a human being striving to reach the level of the gods, using his intellect, skills, and technology to stand alongside superheroes. He builds himself into an ideal that strikes fear and intimidation into his foes. In the movie Batman Begins, his transformation into Batman is about conquering his fears and creating an incorruptible symbol to embody. Superman, on the other hand, is a godlike being who chooses to be human. Despite his immense power, he embraces humility and humanity, working a normal job as Clark Kent and integrating into society. He knows that his powers can be dangerous if used maliciously or by accident. In his fight with Darkseid in the show Justice League Unlimited, he says, "I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something or break someone, never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die." While Batman fights to rise above human limitations to gain his own set of powers by proxy, Superman fights to stay grounded and knows his limitations and what he's capable of. And every other superhero in the DC comics falls in between these two extremes. That distinction is why their portrayals often differ from one another. Batman is built on the aspiration and struggle to ascend, while Superman embodies hope and kindness by showing restraint. It makes sense why Batman's stories in films are more or less brooding, because Batman is in a dark situation and he tries to fight his way out of it, versus Superman in his struggle is about keeping his powers in check and serving humanity. Despite these differences, Batman and Superman can work together in order to save the day. Now, some people may argue that the Silver Age comics doesn't translate well to the taste of modern audiences, but that claim overlooks an important truth. There's nothing wrong with embracing optimism and a little bit of silliness in superhero films. In fact, some of the most beloved films lead into that fact. For example, Superman the movie in 1978 had plenty of lighthearted moments. For example, Lex Luthor's suit in the movie made him look like Ronald McDonald, even without the wig. The Fantastic Four films from the 2000s embraced their comic book charm and allowed itself to be a silly story about teamwork. Regardless if the reviews were good or not, that's just the style it chose. Ang Lee's Hulkville made cinematography choices that may be considered dated to modern audience nowadays. And even Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage had its own campy feel despite the serious topics of tragedy and redemption. These movies worked well because they understood that superheroes don't have to be grim and brooding to be compelling. The real issue is the misconception that people think that darkness equals realism. But let me tell you, just because a film is serious, brooding, and depressing doesn't automatically make it more grounded to reality. Real life is full of moments with a mixture of joy, sorrow, triumph, and struggle. And good storytelling should reflect that full emotional spectrum instead of turning away from it. A well-written, optimistic character can be just as realistic as a tragic one, as long as their journey is handled with care. In today's world, cynicism and sneering often dominate in many different forms, such as politics, social media, mainstream media, personal events, or all together at the same time. A story about hope and resilience isn't just refreshing, but it's a necessity to heal one's mind and soul. The last thing I want to talk about before the video ends is the whole suit debacle. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad, but here are my 2 cents about it. As a character designer and a graphic designer, I have to say that Superman's suit in this new film looks fine. There's nothing that jumps out as a red flag to me. The colors match the classic Superman aesthetic seen in the 1970s film and in various comics. It's sticking with the recognizable red, blue, and yellow. Sure, some of the detailings and paneling on the suit may be distracting, but that depends on personal tastes and opinion. But overall, it does exactly what a Superman suit should do: instantly communicate who he is to the audience. Now moving on to the complaint that the suit looks too baggy. Look, I get it. People have strong opinions about superhero outfits aesthetics. Judging by the behind-the-scene pictures, it does look baggy. However, in some scenes, it looks like the suit has been corrected by removing the wrinkles. Even in this movie, it is implied that Clark Kent's mom made the outfit for him, just like in the comics. So let's not disrespect anybody's mom and their hard work. That's just rude. Some of you guys might be saying, okay, so what's the point of this video? Explaining to me what the thought processes of James Gunn and Zack Snyder, that doesn't really mean anything. Why does knowing all this behind the scenes stuff matter to the final outcome of the movie? Because I believe that if we can understand the methodologies that a person uses to make their decisions, regardless if it's good or bad decisions. But I think overall, context is really important because decisions like this really need to be understood. Things have to be understood in order for things to improve. And that's the goal of not only this video, but my channel. It's about learning. It's about not giving up. Giving up would be just conceding to ignorance or conceding to failure. But me, I believe that if you never stop learning and you never stop trying, then you really never failed. You've succeeded. It's just that the outcome that you're looking for is delayed. And I think that's an important message that people should learn nowadays. And also another reason why I'm doing this video is because here's the thing, I'm not even that much of a fan of Superman. However, during the course of doing research for this video, I actually grown a greater appreciation of Superman as a cultural icon and as a role model as the original creators intended him to be. And if Superman helps me springboard the idea of making a video to come to his defense, then so be it. I'm not a fan of James Gunn. I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder. I'm just a fan of telling the truth, and I am a fan of peace and hope. So in conclusion, Gunn's Superman is an interpretation of multiple stories emphasizing hope, resilience, and humanity, which to me is exactly what Superman should represent. Whether we're talking about James Gunn versus Snyder or dissecting the trailers and leaks, the point is that Superman isn't compelling because he's unbeatable and detached from humanity. He's compelling because he chooses to be humble, reserved, and keeps going despite any adversity. He proves that he is not just an alien living amongst humans, but a person who actively chooses to embrace humanity, carrying love and hope in his heart. No matter who directs a film, it's guaranteed that no version of Superman will ever satisfy everyone. That's just the nature of adapting such an iconic character. But that doesn't mean knee-jerk reactions and baseless nitpickings are justified, nor does it excuse whining and outrage over short snippets of a movie that's over 2 hours long. Plenty of films have had trailers that misrepresented them. Take Jarhead from 2005, whose trailer sold it as an action-packed war film, when in reality it was just an introspective war drama. Or Squad from 2016, marketed as a fun, edgy action film, only to suffer from studio interference that led to tonal inconsistencies. Even minor edits have happened to trailers before the movie releases. For example, in the newer trailer for Superman, they edited out Superman flinching when a can is thrown at him. Whether you love James Gunn's vision or hate it, or whether you prefer Zack Snyder's film or not, at the very least, please wait and watch the full movie before passing judgment. Otherwise, you risk embarrassing yourself in front of the entire internet from jumping to conclusions. And seriously, to all the grown men who are either diehard fans or relentless haters of a particular filmmaker, please don't waste energy being angry over something that has zero impact in your life. That energy could be spent on things that actually matter. Movies come and go. That's the nature of the film business. If one doesn't work for you, just wait a little while. Eventually, someone will inevitably take another shot at Superman. And finally, I got a simple message to all the people who waste their energy on matters like this. Go outside, touch some grass, learn some empathy, and please, be excellent to each other. Thank you for watching. If you guys want me to talk about more superhero stuff or music or art or anything else, just let me know in the comments. Or if you want to say something crazy in the comments, that's fine with me. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See ya.